a fake silhouette, avoiding every threat. I wanna stay like a silhouette, but I can't do that. No, I can't do that.
Hey internet friends, Grace here, back to discuss the Revenge of the Nerds once again. Our favorite nerd has taken a brief hiatus as the world has burned, seemingly disappearing into the backdrop of the smoldering dystopian topography, but apparently he's just been busy. Between releasing engineered mosquitoes in Florida man's backyard, volunteering black people as tribute to try out his inoculation first, as well as producing artificial breast milk. You know, a natural progression of extracurricular activities. It's difficult for me not to make jokes while talking about the king of the nerds because everything he does sounds like the plot of an Austin Powers movie. It's just so incredibly disturbing and absurd. But I'll do my best to keep it professional while we discuss what Bill Gates has been up to. So let's begin. If you've watched my previous videos on Bill Gates, we've established that Bill comes from a very affluent family, as he's the great-grandson of Seattle's Federal Reserve on his mother's side. And his father, in addition to a career as a high-profile attorney with offices across the world, was on the board of Planned Parenthood. While most people associate Bill Gates with Microsoft, he's expanded his influence from technology to medicine to the food supply to government surveillance. And finally, we've demonstrated that while Bill Gates is a billionaire with the big bucks, he's simply a figurehead leading the technocracy charge into the future. And one entity behind his power and influence from the very start has been Bain Company, one of the big three management firms that has staffed, directed, and guided his initiatives, beginning with Microsoft and now with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So when I discuss Bill's actions, please note that while he's a perfect villain and an even better piñata, he's just one face of the technocracy. That being said, just when you thought you only had to worry about murder hornets, Bill Gates pops out of the bushes with GMO mosquitoes, which we'll talk about first. We've all seen the reports over the last few years. The most deadly animal in the world isn't the great white shark or a hippo or even a rattlesnake. Apparently, it's a mosquito with a total body count per year topping 1 million. But it's not really the mosquito that's deadly, it's apparently what the mosquito carries in the form of a parasite that can transmit to humans through the blood, giving us malaria, Zika, West Nile virus, just to name a few. For every modern problem these days, you better believe we've already got a manufactured solution. And for several years now, we've heard whispers about scientists in faraway labs creating what they've dubbed genetically modified mosquitoes, with the explicit goal of reducing the population of wild mosquitoes through several techniques, therefore limiting the spread of the disease. Sounds great, right? I mean, I hate mosquitoes. All of us mosquito haters can get on board. But wait, there's more. Because if anyone even utters the phrase population control into the darkness, it will summon Bill Gates. And he's been on board with these genetically modified mosquitoes since day one, bankrolling the entire operation. In 2018, to the tune of $4.1 million, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded a biotech company called Oxitec that aimed to successfully deploy a self-limiting mosquito strain designed to reduce the spread of targeted diseases. I've been following this story for several years, and these genetically engineered mosquitoes have threatened to leave the lab several times, even with the United States military getting in on the action and the research behind this goal. But this latest update I became aware of through Spiro's recent video as well as Jeff C's coverage of these engineered mosquitoes, so shout out to them and I'll link those videos below. Basically, at the end of March 2020, the Environmental Protection Agency, otherwise known as the EPA, said it was going to suspend its enforcement of environmental laws and told companies that they would not need to meet environmental standards during the corona outbreak. So the EPA has suspended monitoring and enforcement of environmental regulations on American companies during the pandemic. If you want to pollute the earth, cut some corners, or engage in immoral practices that will have a negative consequence on the public at large, now's your time to shine. Oxitec, the same biotech company that Bill Gates bankrolled over the last few years, is seizing this opportunity to release millions upon millions of genetically modified male mosquitoes into the Florida Keys. The plan is the genetically modified male mosquitoes will hook up with the lady mosquitoes and produce artificially weak offspring that will never grow up. Sound familiar? And by doing so, this will reduce the overall mosquito population in the future. And since male mosquitoes don't even drink human blood, They're set to release these by the millions into the great unknown, and yes, it is truly the great unknown. Because there are so many unknown factors in the sudden release of millions of mosquitoes in the United States, especially when mosquitoes already transmit disease. With no regulations or oversight, couldn't this massive experiment fall into the hands of someone who truly wants to reduce the population? And we're not talking the mosquito population. Speaking of population reduction in guinea pigs, on June 7, 2020, a headline ran that stated Melinda Gates says Black people must be vaccinated first for corona after healthcare workers. The damage control of this headline has extended from Snopes to even USA Today, saying that the wording of this headline was entirely too harsh. That Melinda Gates, of course, wasn't offering up Black people as guinea pigs to get the vaccine first. You know, a practice that Bill and Melinda Gates have been doing since they established the Gates Foundation in 2001, having conducted their pharmaceutical trials across Africa and India, with some of these trials yielding in horrific results that have been covered up by mainstream media time and time again. But no, of course Melinda Gates didn't mean Black people should pony up to be the first to try out the vaccine behind healthcare workers. She just meant that Black people have been more affected by corona, therefore should have the opportunity to get the vaccine first. It's interesting because neither Bill nor Melinda have any formal medical training. Neither of them were elected, and neither of them have any qualifications besides being super mega rich. Yet they somehow shape public health policy across the world. Some of you know that I'm pregnant and going to be a first-time mom, and because of this, I've really been paying attention to what the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been doing and what sway they have in regards to the kind of care babies receive from when they're still in utero to when they can walk. These people have a say in what tests take place in a hospital within the first moments of a child's life and what inoculations are on the vaccine schedule. And from where I'm sitting, these people have only demonstrated for generations between the Federal Reserve and Planned Parenthood that they're eugenicists with a total disregard for human life. And they have their hands all over everything you can think of, from the computer you're watching this on right now, to the surveillance technology within your own phone, to the food you can eat, the medicine you take, the mosquitoes buzzing around your head, and now, in the latest development, the breast milk you might give your baby. Bill Gates has invested millions of dollars in a startup that aims to develop artificial breast milk, because they think that baby formula has too much of a carbon footprint on the environment, so they need to find a way to synthesize breast milk in the lab. The startup is called BioMilk, and their primary focus is infant nutrition to reduce climate change. Let me tell you something, I've been around for a minute, long enough to get a sense of transhumanism and watch science make their argument for playing God. And these folks are frothing at the mouth to grow babies in synthetic wombs and eliminate the need for a human mother and father from the equation altogether, as well as make the idea mainstream and get the general public to beg for it. I'll provide plenty of sources to support these claims. There's nothing they'd love more than to strap that lab-grown baby to the metal teat of some robot, because it's their future for the city on the hill as fertility drops across the world between men and women, and the generation of fertile people are discouraged from reproducing. They can effectively control the population. As we've covered in previous videos, everything edible Bill Gates touches has Monsanto Roundup in it, another company he's invested in heavily. So will this lab-grown breast milk also have traces of Monsanto in it? And what are the effects of consuming these chemicals as a developing child? Not everyone is able to breastfeed, and not everyone wants to breastfeed, and I get that. I'm not judging you. But for those who don't already know, natural breastfeeding decreases your baby's risk of contracting viruses and infections because it supplies them with necessary antibodies. Studies have shown that breastfeeding aids in brain development and reduces the risk of future behavioral and learning problems. Of course, breastfeeding helps mom and baby bond, and it's even proven to lower the mother's chances of developing breast and ovarian cancer in the future. To be blunt, these benefits will not be available to you if your baby drinks Bill Gates' titty milk. Nestle, who has collaborated numerous times with the Bill Gates Foundation in the past, has had their own scandal with baby formula dating back to the 1980s, when there was a corporate drive to replace breast milk with a profitable artificial product, so mothers could become consumers. Nestle passed out samples of artificial baby milk in the third world, where they used marketing to undermine normal bodily functions to create a physical need for a commercial product. These formula samples hooked a mother on formula because once you start bottle feeding a baby, which of course you have to do with formula, your breast milk supply starts to dry up and it doesn't come back. So when you finish a sample, you actually have to go out and buy more. Otherwise, your baby will starve and die. So Nestle hired some milk nurses to promote formula to mothers and health professionals. So the hospitals actually promoted the product for them, passing out the samples to new mothers who were struggling with breastfeeding, establishing bottle feeding and earning a customer before they ever left the hospital. In the third world, this resulted in hundreds of thousands of infants dying because their mothers simply couldn't afford or didn't have access to the formula. I think this demonstrates how dangerous it can be to mix corporate interests in healthcare, to say the very least. To wrap this up here, I am skeptical about Bill and Melinda's intentions when it comes to newborn care, whether it be on their selection of inoculations they promote to the artificial breast milk they fund. They have not earned my trust, and therefore it is not given to them. What do you think, internet friends? You know, I always look forward to reading your comments. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, and supporting me on Patreon. Bye!
I'm just a fake silhouette.